Article 1, Section 7 of the Constitution is about how a bill becomes a law. You know the whole I'm just a bill and I'm sitting here on Capitol Hill thing? That is Article 1, Section 7 of the U.S. Constitution. Article 1, Section 9 has all sorts of cool stuff in it, like no title of nobility shall be granted by the United States. I'm sorry, you cannot be a king or a prince or a duke or an earl. You cannot even be king of the forest, not here. That is in Article 1, Section 9. But in Article 1, between the I'm just a bill section, 7, and the you can't be king section, 9, is the section that is number 8, and that is the enumerated powers of Congress. That's where the Constitution says that we should have, say, a navy. It's where Congress gets the power to print money and to punish counterfeiting and to define and punish piracy. This is also the part of the Constitution that explicitly creates a post office. Like the census and the you can't be king thing, the post office is in the Constitution. Post offices actually predate the country. Ben Franklin ran one in Philadelphia at the direction of the Second Continental Congress, which predated the Declaration of Independence. Then it ended up in the Constitution, and the post office was a cabinet agency until 1971. Since then, it is not in the cabinet anymore, but it is still part of what we do as a country. It is an independent agency. But it's the Constitution that says explicitly that we as a country shall have post offices. Also, if you have a post road anywhere in your town, that's from the same part of the Constitution. Government has the power to set up roads for the use of moving mail around the country. And boy, howdy do we. 6,761 pieces of mail are processed every second by the U.S. Postal Service. The single biggest employer in the country is Walmart. The second biggest employer is the U.S. Postal Service. The Post Office operates the largest civilian fleet of vehicles in the entire world. And even though it doesn't necessarily look like it, they buy American. Most of their fleet are GMs and Fords. It is sort of confusing because many post office cars look sort of foreign because the steering wheel is on the right-hand side of the road or the right-hand side of the vehicle, but that is so as to better reach your mailbox. Even though they look foreign, they are almost all American cars, and it's the biggest civilian fleet in the world. Our U.S. Postal Service delivers 40% of all the physical mail that is delivered in the world, even though we are only about 5% of the world's population. The post office has the power to negotiate postal treaties with other countries. Their post office police force, the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, one of the oldest federal law enforcement agencies in the entire nation. You already know I'm a geek about civic stuff, and I am sort of in love with all of the things that are quirky and underappreciated about the U.S. Postal Service. I have long been. But here's the thing. Don't be a hater about this. Turns out you love the post office, too. Last year, the Pew Research Center asked people to rate their favorite federal agencies. The U.S. Postal Service, far and away the winner, with an 83% favorable view. 83%. Americans kind of love their letter carriers. They love the U.S. Postal Service. Republicans in Congress right now, not so much.
It looks like the post office is somewhat becoming a dinosaur. I didn't send any letters to my nieces and nephews today. I sent them an email.
You can order your medicines over that, but you cannot get them delivered to your home.
Well,
the mail volume is going to change.
True.
The type of mail is going to change.
That's true, and that's why I usually use FedEx or UPS.
When you're talking about concerns about your employees losing their pensions and their benefits, what do we say to the private sector who faces losing Social Security and Medicare benefits?
How do you feel about this agreement?
I feel like the agreement was a give and take.
And you told your employees it's a pretty good deal, didn't you?
I have told my people exactly what it is.
And you think it's an excellent deal, so much so that you're going to pay your members to vote, are you not?
You know, we produced in our committee a report called The Federal Governments Must Stop Sitting on Its Assets. I don't think we had a chapter in there for you, but maybe we could write one.
Footage from a hearing today at which the Postmaster General, yet again, something cool about the post office. It's the Postmaster General. Yes, sir. Today, the Postmaster General and the head of one of the largest postal employee unions testified together about the contract they just collectively bargained for. It was a contract in which each side made compromises on stuff like layoffs and cost cutting, and they came up with the deal that both sides, both employment and labor, both sides, employer and employee, felt was pretty fair and pretty frugal. But even though the post office gets no direct public funding whatsoever, even though it does not receive taxpayer funding, the fact that it is part of the government, the fact that it provides a government service that Americans really like, means that by definition, Republicans hate it. And the fact that there is a good labor management employer-employee relationship there, a relationship that is seen as productive and constructive on both sides, in Republican eyes, that is not a good thing. That is something Republicans in government would like to change. This little Republicans hate the post office hearing today was, of course, not the main event in Washington today. But this kind of thing is part of the regular background noise in D.C. all the time now. With Republicans in control of the House, there's a constant drumbeat of, we hate the government doing things that people like. And there's two things that are important about this for the other party, for Democrats. One is that every time Republicans pop off about how much they hate something, there is an opportunity for Democrats to take the other side of that. Remember that Pew poll? 83% of people dig the post office. 83% of people love the proverbial mailman. Well, here's Republican Congressman John Mica of Florida yelling at the mailman. Here's Republican Congressman Dennis Ross of Florida yelling at the mailman. Republicans are ideologically committed to showing off for their base their hatred of government services that people like. This is low-hanging fruit for Democrats, should the Democrats choose to pick it. But the other reason this is important to notice, the reason it's important to notice this is going on in D.C. now, is because you can't really predict or understand what is going on in Washington right now in the big picture without understanding where Republicans are coming from, strategically and ideologically, what they are trying to prove, how they think what they are saying sounds at home to the people they hope are listening to them. In all of the Beltway press coverage of this potential budget showdown in D.C. now, you read over and over and over again about how desperate both sides are to avoid a government shutdown. Right? In the Washington Post, quote, Republicans and Democrats are eager to avoid a shutdown. At Slate.com today, quote, no government shutdown. Why Republicans and Democrats will work to avoid the crisis. This is the Beltway frame for what's going on in the government shutdown fight right now. And it sort of sounds right until you notice that Republicans don't seem that eager to be avoiding this shutdown. I mean, Republicans themselves keep saying, oh, no, we don't want to shut down. It's the Democrats who are talking about that. But then listen to what they have been saying about it. They have been promising a showdown since before the midterm elections. They ran for office in November in part by saying they would shut down the government. They love talking about this. This is a montage recently put together by the website Think Progress.
Or should I shut down government? And I got to tell you, most people in my district say shut it down.
It's not a great thing. And yet, at the same time, it's not something that we can rule out. It may be absolutely necessary.
And the American people could see life would go on without the federal government for a little while.
I don't think it would hurt one bit.
Even if it means, say, showing how serious we are. Okay, government's going to have to shut down.
So you think even if that were to happen, theoretically, it wouldn't be as bad as people make it out?
No, I don't think it would be.
Do you think shutdown should be off the table?
Everything ought to be on the table.
We will do what we have to do to shut down the government if we have to.
Do they sound eager to avoid a shutdown? Not only have Republicans been promising by going like this, promising to shut down the government for months now, rationally, strategically, there is no reason why they wouldn't. The Republican base is clamoring for a shutdown.
And if liberals in the Senate would rather play political games and shut down the government instead of making a small down payment on fiscal discipline and reform, I say shut it down.
They have a song. It goes, cut it or shut it, cut it or shut it. I say shut it down. Wah! Does that sound like they are desperate to avoid a shutdown? Cut it or shut it. Cut it or shut it. They have a song for this. A recent CNN poll showed that 62% of self-identified Tea Party supporters, otherwise known as the Republican Party's base, say that a government shutdown would be a good thing. They are not hoping to avoid a shutdown. They are hoping for a shutdown. you remember that really famous chicken scene in the movie Rebel Without a Cause? James Dean and the other guy are in two different cars. They are driving toward a cliff. They're each trying to win this game of chicken. And the way you win this game of chicken is that you are the last one to jump out of your car before the car goes off the cliff. Would you still enter into that game? And how on earth would you try to win that game if you knew that the guy in the other car was desperately suicidal? If winning is being last out of the car and you know the other dude is not going to bail out of his car ever and doesn't even want to, how do you win this game? The Washington Post reports that last night, when Republican House Speaker John Boehner went to go talk to his caucus about the negotiations, when he made it clear that it looked like a shutdown was coming, how did the Republican caucus in the House respond to that worry? They gave him a cheering ovation. This is not a group of people who are eager to avoid a shutdown, no matter what you've read. There is not a negotiation going on in Washington that is about avoiding a government shutdown. There is a reason that Speaker John Boehner keeps moving the goalposts in terms of what Democrats have to agree to in order to avoid this government shutdown. Democrats keep agreeing to everything he demands, but that just means he has to demand more, because the goal is not to get Democrats to do anything in particular. The goal is the shutdown itself. This is the party that has just proposed getting rid of Medicare, one of the most successful and popular government programs ever other than Social Security. And oh, wait till you hear what they want to do with that one. When Republican Congressman Paul Ryan introduced his budget today, he said, "This is not a budget. This is a cause." I know it sounds like I'm making that up. Turns out I'm not.
This is not a budget. This is a cause.
This is a cause. It is about seeking a shutdown. It is not about avoiding a shutdown. It is about finding the most popular, most successful government programs and shutting those ones down, privatizing them, hiving them off, because they're successful, because they're popular, because they remind people that there's a reason to have a public sector and it's worth defending. And they like the mailman and teachers and firefighters and Social Security and Medicare. Hey, wait, hands off. It is not about a budget. It is, for them, about a cause.
This is not a budget. This is a cause.
A wildly, wildly unpopular cause. The Democrats can either choose to win by championing the very popular other side of this cause, or they can just keep on negotiating. Joining us now is Melissa Harris Perry, MSNBC contributor and associate professor of politics and African American studies at Princeton. Melissa, it's nice to see you. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. Good to be here.
If they do not reach an agreement tonight and the government shuts down this weekend, 5 years from now, why will Americans understand that this shutdown happened?
Oh, who knows 5 years from now? I mean, seriously, part of the problem here is, I think, that Americans seem to have, despite the poll numbers that you're showing, Americans seem to have little understanding about what government is really doing for them on a daily basis. I mean, if you ask Americans, what has government done for you lately, you're likely to get a response like, well, not much, or, they've taken my whole paycheck, or something like that. And look, the Republicans are not a dumb group strategically. They know that most Americans have been doing what I've been doing the past couple of weeks, which is fiddling with our heads in our hands, trying to get our tax returns in. And so this is a moment where people have kind of the most anxiety about government, because they feel like they're paying in and they don't have a clear narrative about what they're getting out.
But why then, on something like Medicare, would they be proceeding right now? Why would the Republicans choose to reveal their plan to kill Medicare right now, this super, super beloved program? They announce it on the day the president announces that he is running for re-election. They announce it right on the eve of this potential shutdown. Why Medicare? Why now?
I think there's a lot of different things going on here, but at its core, what we see is really just the fruition of now 25, 30 years of public discourse that the Democrats have participated in that says that government is bad. I mean, if you can remember the confusion that was occurring during the health care reform debate, where you had people at town hall meetings saying things like, keep the government's hands off my Medicare, right? There was clear confusion about who was providing these services, right? I think, even when you talk about something like going to the ATM and taking out $50 and knowing that that money is there because it's insured by FDIC, being able to eat an egg for breakfast and know that that egg doesn't have salmonella because it's been inspected by by federal inspectors. My mother's new hips, one on the left and one on the right, both paid for by Medicare, which she paid into and which I pay into. But if we disconnect those things from our understanding that this is government provision, then I think it's actually relatively easy to go after them individually and to make a claim that private industry can do them better and more efficiently, because that's really been the discourse for 20 years.
Well, why are Democrats so shy about wanting to defend the basic idea of government from this, the government is the problem, conservatism? Letter carriers and firefighters and police officers and teachers are beloved national figures. Medicare and Social Security are beloved national programs. Why are Democrats so shy about making them their party's own symbols, even their mascots for the Democratic Party?
You were talking about civics lessons earlier, and I have to say that part of what happened, and we can really trace this back to a very clear strategy on the part of Republicans after the end of the 1960s, and it was to take all of those beloved figures and link them with figures that are less beloved. So, for example, the growth of the African-American middle class in the 1970s, that was mostly men working in post office and women working as teachers. The language of what government was doing for citizens got linked to groups like African Americans, poor people, new immigrant communities. To the extent that Republicans have been very successful in linking, in fact, very efficient, high quality and broad-based programs, or even things like, for example, public schools, to populations and communities that are less beloved, more stereotyped, more stigmatized, they've been able to lap those onto each other and sort of create these anxieties in populations that actually need and benefit from, on a daily basis, government actions.
And that's been a deliberate strategy, and it works if nobody fights back against it.
That's right.
Which is the ongoing task of the Democratic Party in my lifetime, which means I'll never have anything to stop talking about because they never seem to make progress on this. Melissa Harris-Perry, MSNBC contributor, associate professor of politics and African American studies at Princeton, and very smart person. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Rachel.